Hey guys, so a lot of y'all have been asking me about the attributes for my characters, about like, oh, how do you get enough intelligence for the build? How do you get enough strength? How do you get enough dexterity? And I wanted to go over that and the fundamentals of getting the stat requirements for your characters in this video today. Now, my character right now has 74 strength, 243 dexterity, and 205 intelligence. And that's because I need a lot of these stats for the different items and different gems that I wear. For example, for our dexterity, we need quite a high dexterity requirement for our skills like Herald of Thunder, but we also have skills like Cast on Freeze that needs a lot of int as well. And we also need some strength for our Tangle Tongue, and I think we need some strength for our Sacred Flame as well. So these are all stat requirements that we need for our character, and if you don't have the correct stats and the required stats, you're not able to use all these items. So a lot of people have been asking, right, how do I get these stats? And it's actually fairly simple. It really is, at the end of the day, kind of like a balanced game. So how it works is that even though I have all these different stats on my character, I'm not getting it all from my passive tree. Now, of course, there is some stuff that I'm getting from my passive tree. For example, we have some int here, allocated all across here. We have some dex allocated across here. But this tree itself is not giving me every single stat that I need. And that's because everything else that I have is made up for with our equipment. For example, our chest has dexterity, our belt has strength and dexterity, our boots have intelligence, our ring has strength, this ring has intelligence, this has intelligence on it. Basically, we have stats on our gear, and that is the long story short of how you get the required stats for what you need for your character. But there is a little bit of a nuance to it, and I wanted to go over that nuance today specifically. That way you can learn what you can use to get certain stats, because not every piece of gear is made equally in terms of the type of stats that you can get. Every single gear in general can roll stats, right? You can get stats on everything: your weapon, helmet, chest, rings, gloves, belts, shoes, offhand weapon, whatever. But not every single one of them will roll every single stat. For example, right now, my chest armor has 22 dexterity. It can roll dexterity and it can roll intelligence, but it cannot roll strength. And the reasoning for that is because of the item base that it is. An easy way to check out what item base you have is by taking a look at the stats it gives you or the stats that's required. So as you can see here with the chest armor, it's an evasion rating energy shield chest, which means that it is going to be a dexterity int chest, and you can see by the requirements as well that it requires dex and int. So that is why you know that this chest is going to be rolling dexterity and int for its stats, and it won't be able to roll strength at all. Now for our boots, right? These are energy shield boots. So we have a requirement of int, but nothing on dexterity, which means that these boots can only roll int, no dexterity, no strength. These gloves, evasion rating, energy shield, right? Again, dex, int. So you can see the trends that we're going for here, right? And you can see over here with my offhand scepter, right? We have a strength int scepter, so we can roll strength and int on it. So that's the trend, right? Basically, whatever stats you need for that piece of gear, that is the type of stat that can roll on that piece of gear. Though there are some exceptions with uniques. For example, right here with Tangle Tongue, this has a strength and dex requirement, but as you can see here, it has some int on it. So uniques do kind of break these conventions a little bit every now and then, and you might get, like, for example, hit on this strength dex weapon. And the other thing that we have to take in mind is belts. Belts can pretty much only roll strength unless it's a unique belt like this. For example, if we take a look at this belt right here, the Rune Lash plate belt, you can see it has 25 strength, and you are unable to roll intelligence or dex on any rare belt. Again, if you have a unique one, that can be a little bit different, but in general, for rares, for magic, for regular items, belts can only roll strength. Now, for accessories, the opposite is true. As you can see here, I have an int on this accessory, and I have strength on this one. And my amulet doesn't have anything, but if we had a rare amulet, for example, that could roll anything as well. So accessories for the ring slots and the amulet slot those can roll any stat you want. And that's why last season in point 1, breach rings with a lot of stat were really, really popular because you could use them to get a ton of stats. For example, this breach ring right here has strength on it. This breach ring has int on it. This one can even roll all attributes. And dexterity is another thing that you can roll. So for our rings, they can roll anything, including all attributes. As you can see here, this ring here right here has dexterity, intelligence, all attributes. This one has all attributes, intelligence. You can see that the ring slots and the amulet slots are much more flexible. Now, lastly, recently Grinding Gear Games did add something into the game to help you with your requirements for stats, and that comes in the socketables, the runes. So if I put in here, right, intelligence, you can see these runes will give you intelligence whenever you slot them into anything, whether it be a weapon, armor, or wand or staff. You can't really do it with your scepters, unfortunately, but you can do it for basically everything else that has a socket on it. And they have it for dexterity as well, and strength, right? So these are ways that GG has added into the game for you to be able to get more stats and attributes to get, fulfill your requirements. Now, while these are very useful during the campaign, and letting you, let's just say, oh, I really need the stat for this skill gem or this piece of gear in order to use it. It's very useful for the campaign for that. But unfortunately, during the end game, you ideally never want to use any of these on your gear because the other soul cores and runes are just so much more valuable. Chest armor, you pretty much always want the iron rune in it. Same with your helmet for the most part, and your boots for energy shield at least. For other ones, for like armor, it might be a little bit flexible on your helmet and boots and stuff. But in general, you're gonna want to have iron runes on these. And for your weapons, you're going to want to have like takabas, or like you're gonna want to have iron runes or different things like that on them. You pretty much never want to have stats on your runes at the end game. So this really is purely just for leveling up. You just have so much more stuff that's valuable later on in the game. So yeah, those are the general rules for where and how you're going to get your stats from your character and gears. I know it's a lot of information, so I'm going to put a cheat sheet on the screen right now for where you can get all of these stats, and feel free to pause the screen right now to be able to kind of digest everything. But we're going to also move on here to talk about how you should use your stats and where you should put them. Because I also think a lot of you guys are wondering like, oh, well, you have int on your ring right here. Does that mean I should follow and do the same thing if I want to use your build and put int on my ring and strength on this ring and int on my boots? Like, do I want to be following exactly what you're doing? I mean, the short answer is that you can, but you shouldn't be, I guess, feel like you're pigeonholed into the way that I've done it. Because when you're searching for gear, you might not always find the chest armor that you want with, let's just say, dexterity on it or int on it. This character uses Hand of Wisdom in action, so you want to be stacking as much int as possible. But my chest armor doesn't have int on it. Does that mean my chest armor is worse than if it had int on it? The answer is actually no. Some of you guys might think yes, but the answer is actually no. Even though we want to be stacking as much int as possible on our character, the chest armor having dexterity or having int actually doesn't matter. And that's because of the passive skill tree. So for me, I found this chest armor, it had dex on it. I'm like, okay, perfect. This is actually the perfect chest piece. It has resistances, it has high, decent evasion, decent energy shield, and it has spirit on it, right? Just because it has dexterity on it doesn't make it any worse than having int on it. Well, a little bit, but I'll go into it. Just because it has dex doesn't really mean it's worse than int, because what we can do is, well, let's just say, oh shoot, well, I really want int instead of dex. Well, you can make that change on your tree. So right now, let's just say I'm floating 22 extra dexterity, and I want to use more int. We can go to Doriani and be like, okay, well, since I gained 22 dexterity on my chest armor, we can go and remove 20 dexterity from our tree. And that gives us, that's basically as though our chest armor had 20 int on it, because we were able to remove some of the dex from our tree and turn it into int. So it's basically the same as having int on your chest armor. Now there is a little bit of difference because this has 22 dexterity and we were only able to move 20 int on our tree. So there still is a benefit to having the right stat on your piece of gear because of that extra little bit. Like for example, this has 22 int, this has 32 strength, right? It's not exactly 30, 25, 20. It's not exactly in increments of 5. So there is going to be a little bit of spillover, and that's why it still is kind of more ideal in general to kind of have the right stats on your gear, but it really doesn't make that much of a difference. And also, one thing you will notice is like your requirements for your skills, for example, aren't going to be always exactly at a round like 5 increment. For example, Combat Frenzy is at 191. So if you have like 31 dexterity on your gear, right, then that extra 1 actually doesn't go to waste at all. Something like that, right? So it really is kind of a push and pull, let's just say. If you have a certain stat on your gear and it's not exactly the one that you require, that's totally fine, because as long as it's a stat that you need for your character, which for this character we need all 3 stats, right? Then you could just make the proper adjustments on your tree and change and shift things as you want. You find rings that has more dexterity. You don't need dexterity. Then go on your tree, change that dexterity to int. You find a ring with strength. You don't need that much strength. Well, instead of having strength on your tree, now you just have it on your ring, and you could turn that strength you had before into something else like dex or int. So that's kind of how you do your stats for your character. It is, at the end of the day, a push and pull situation. You're going to pull up on some of these. Like if your stats for your gear go up this way, then you could balance that out on your tree by bringing the other stuff down or up. So yeah, hopefully that was pretty easy to understand and pretty self-explanatory. If you have any questions, if something wasn't clear, let me know down in the comment section below, and I'll try to answer as much as I can. But also, I stream every single night on twitch.tv/MisoXshiro, so you have any questions, please come and ask me there, because I am always open to answering anything you guys have to ask me. Don't feel like it's like, oh, I don't want to bother them or whatever. I am happy to answer it, and the community, appreciates as well, because, if you didn't know something, there's likely somebody else out there who didn't know it as well, and you asking it means that that person also got their question answered. So come hang out with me, twitch.tv/MisoXshiro. I stream every single night. And of course, if you enjoyed the content and you learned something, please consider hitting the sub button. It is the best way to support the channel, and it's completely free. But if you want to support the channel a little bit more, I do have a Patreon. My one Patreon supporter, Mr. Forever Fire SNSD, is holding up the fort there. So shout outs to him for being subscribed to my Patreon. And if you guys want to support me there, I would highly welcome it and love it as well. But until next time, guys, hopefully you guys have a good one, and I'll see y'all on the next video. All right, guys, peace.